Welcome back to Mean Streets, where each week we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir.
I'm Lou Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth, and we are your cinematic sleuths. Today's case is 1981's The Great Muppet Caper, starring Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Diana Rigg, Charles Grodin, and many more. Written by Tom Patchett, Jay Tarses, Jerry Juhl, and Jack Rose, and directed by Jim Henson. The IMDb logline is Kermit the Frog, the Great Gonzo, and Fozzie Bear are reporters who travel to Britain to interview a rich victim of jewel thieves and help her along with her secretary, Miss Piggy. The Muppets. Before we get into the Muppets, Luke,
yes,
we have a little bit of news, I think.
We do. We have news. We have just launched our Patreon account. So by the time you are listening to this episode, people, this has the Patreon will have been live for, I want to say, like 6 to 7 weeks. So hopefully
something like that.
Yeah, hopefully you will have already signed up. But if you haven't yet, we've launched a Patreon. We got 3 tiers. There's all sorts of stuff. You can for a quid, for $1, you can $1 a month. You can ask us a question about upcoming episodes and get the scoop on what we're going to be reviewing in the future, and we'll read your questions on air. And we'll you can for another tier you can help vote and pick which episodes you want us to review. And another tier, we're going to be doing some YouTube live. We're going to be recording some commentaries and exclusive reviews that you can only get if you are a patron. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm excited. I hope people sign up because I think it's pretty cool.
I'm excited too, and I agree. I hope people sign up. It's an opportunity to go further into the dark world of Mean Streets.
And possibly stop us from doing films like The Great Muppet Caper.
And possibly stop us doing films like The Great Muppet Caper.
I promise there's a noir film in here somewhere.
If there's anybody out there who thinks this isn't noir, then become a Patreon and tell us not to do it again.
Exactly. No, I think buried in this it's an hour and 48 minutes. I think buried in this hour and 48 minute movie is a film noir, a Muppet film noir that is desperate to get out, but I'll just say it struggles to get out. But it's there. Yeah. It is there.
It's we'll come on to this in much more detail, I can assure you, but it's a noir plot that is buried deep beneath some bad and some good jokes, but far too many songs.
Yes. We will get into all of that. Do you were you a fan of the Muppets when they came out?
No, I'm sorry to say that the Muppets passed me by. And Sesame Street passed me by, and anything like that passed me by. Because I reckon, so this is 1981 that this film is released.
Yeah.
And this is the second Muppet film.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon the Muppets were on British TV at that time, because I remember them being on, but late 70s, early 80s, I was superhero nuts, and I would have been watching the Bill Bixby Hulk series rather than the Muppets.
Yes.
And I will have been watching Nicholas Hammond's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
More than the Muppets. So the Muppets are something. I mean, they're not alien to me. I know who and what they are, and what the show was generally about, and I certainly know the theme song to the show.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything. I couldn't say I was a fan. And I've never seen this film until watching it to prepare for today.
Same. This is the first time I've seen it. I mean, I guess sort of like you, I've always been aware of the Muppets, and I have watched them sporadically over my life. Growing up, I don't remember watching the Muppet movies. I don't think I ever saw them as a kid, but I was firmly aware of them. The only Muppet show I have a vivid memory of watching was a show called Muppet Babies on Cartoon Net, on Nick Jr., the cartoon Nickelodeon for kids during the day.
I remember watching that we used to have a Saturday TV kids show in the mornings, like things like Going Live back in the 80s. And it was on one of those. And I think I only watched it then waiting for like the Batman animated series to come on, which would have been on the same program at a different time, but I never knew when. So, but yeah, I remember the Muppet Babies more than I remember the Muppets.
Yeah, well, I guess if you think about it, by the time the Muppet Babies came out, that's kind of what it must be 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that range. The Muppets show was over by this point. They were doing the films, but I guess what surprised me a little bit about the Muppets, and this is something I've come to learn in recent years, or months, or weeks, or days, or hours, is that I always assumed that the Muppets were like Sesame Street and for children, like it geared for kids. But interestingly, Jim Henson's initial concept for the Muppets was to be adult and serious, and I think at one point he wanted some sort of like Muppet crime drama when he was doing the show, when he was pitching the show, and no one really bought it. No one in the States picked it up. It got picked up in the UK and became a UK production that was then exported to the States, which I never realized. And I thought that was fascinating because I put on the Muppet show for my daughter. I was like, oh, well, we'll watch the Muppets. You can, we'll see if you take to it. And I'm like, there are jokes and songs in here that are like super, super suggestive and very adult. And I'm like, oh, the Muppets aren't meant for kids.
Yeah, I had a similar feeling. I had a similar sensation.
Shit. Okay.
and because some of the jokes in this film about that are breaking the fourth wall, are really quite clever.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of, I mean, in a bizarre way, I felt this film was like watching a puppet version of Airplane.
Yeah, yes. Do
you know what I mean? Without
similar in its satire and its absurdity.
In its approach, and and there's some great lines like, he says, well, Diana Rigg at one point says something along the lines of, "This is exposition. It's got to be done quickly and got out of the way."
Yes, yes.
And you think kids aren't going to get that? Your average sort of kid ain't going to get that.
Yeah.
At the age like you, I always thought the Muppets was aimed sort of 6 to 10 or whatever.
Yes.
So it was those moments that made me sort of sit up and listen really and think, there is something. There is something about this.
Yeah. Yes. It's bizarre. It's very, very bizarre because my whole life I grew up thinking this was kids. This was aimed at kids, but having recently learned, I'm like, oh no, this the films are definitely more geared towards kid-friendly audiences. But the Muppet Show, from what I've watched so far, I'm like, this is adult entertainment. This is like Alf or something like that, kind of that sort of thing. This is not. Yeah, well,
I think one of the writers of this was the co-creator of Alf.
He was, yes, one of them. Yes, Tom Patchett.
Tom Patchett. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess we might as well step behind the camera and talk a little about how this film got made and who made it. And
why they made it.
and why they made it. Who knows? But yeah, so it came out in 1981. Its budget was 14 million, and its box office return in the United States, so this isn't the worldwide box office, it's the United States box office, was 31.2 million. So definitely seemed to have made its money back. And then some. This was Jim Henson's directorial debut, which is interesting. I found that also fascinating because I just would have assumed that he had maybe done the first movie or something. He's, because this is his thing. He is Jim Henson.
Well, just by contrast, the first one, the budget was 8 million.
Yes.
And its box office was 65.2 million.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty steep drop.
So I wonder
is that worldwide box office or is that UK?
That's worldwide
or US. Okay, well this is just United States. 31.2 million is just United States.
But I wonder whether I think it was seen at the time. The contemporary critics at the time said that, it's not as good as the first one, as they often say about sequels. And I wonder. It is interesting that Henson, given this is his gig, given this is his baby, as it were, didn't direct that first one. Maybe it was a case of, I'll just see how I'll get someone else in to do it and see how it's done, and then I'll do the next one. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think he does a bad job of it.
I don't either.
think
Sorry,
some
just
of it is-
back on box office. Just checking IMDb now. Yeah, the gross worldwide has it as 31,000. So it sounds like well, this is the gross for US and Canada, and then worldwide, and it's all the same. So did this not open in the UK, or are these numbers just not here? Either way, if that's US and Canada, I can't imagine the UK adding much more to that. So this seems like
I can't imagine. I
pretty
can't
big
imagine
drop.
1981 Britain.
Despite this being a British production,
despite it being a
and
British production,
set
and
in London,
and despite, which is again something we'll talk about later, the number of British actors in this, from stars to character actors, is just incredible. You know,
what I'm
all over the show.
assuming. What I'm assuming is because this was not, the Muppet Show was not picked up in the States and production was always done in the UK. That everything is here. That's my assumption. That everything
That's my
is
assumption
here,
as well.
and that's why they have access to all these people, because this is where they probably predominantly live and work on Muppet related projects.
But the caliber of some of the people they got,
Yes,
you know, is just mind blowing.
yes.
Mind blowing.
So,
but we'll talk about the cast later on. But yeah. I don't know why Henson didn't do the first one. I've not been able to find anything out about that really. But given that this is his directorial debut, I think he does a pretty damn decent job. I really do.
I think visually, shot composition, some of the effects that they've done are very fantastic. It's not a film that is bad to look at by any stretch.
No, it's not. No, by no means.
His eye for the comedy and the hijinks and visual storytelling is wonderful, and it is captivating to watch. And that's why I have a bit of a problem, because it's like this. I'm watching stuff that is in isolation fantastic, but as a whole, I'm like, ugh, oh dear. and I think this highlights something in his. There's a biography on Jim Henson, and there's a quote that I pulled from it, because basically his initial concept for the Muppets 2 was vague as shit. And so this quote is, from the beginning, Jim knew he wanted his film to be an homage to early movie musicals. Because and this is his quote, because I so enjoy those movies, I intended the second Muppet movie to have the fun and joy of those early films. That's the end of the quote. Carrying on from the quote from the book, the author continues, he being Jim, also knew that he wanted Kermit to be a reporter turned detective who would have to compete with a rival for Miss Piggy's affections, but typically he was having a difficult time articulating the rest of his story, only vaguely directing that it be joyful with a positive attitude towards life. Now, I agree that when I see that, joyful and a positive attitude towards life, yes, that is 100% this film. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. When he says at the beginning that he wants this to be an homage to early musicals, you get that from the very beginning of the film. That absolutely. I think is so crystal clear.
From the opening credits.
Yeah, where the vagueness comes in and things get complicated, and when he's like, Kermit can be a reporter turned detective, and there's a rival for Miss Piggy's affections, and it's a happy story. And the thing is, it's like this is where it's interesting, because you have this film called The Great Muppet Caper, and the caper is like 5% of this movie.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The rest of it is homage to musicals.
Yeah,
that's it.
The Great Muppet Caper is the last 10 minutes of the film. 15 minutes of push. Like you say, the rest of it is singing.
Yes, yes.
And I've said in previous episodes, I am not the world's greatest musical fan.
No, you said that in the last episode. I think we were talking about.
I think I did say it in the last episode about
Smallville.
Yeah, I'm not a lover of musicals. And in the Smallville episode, we talked about the fact that was originally going to be a musical, and Tom Welling said no chance. Welling said no chance. Well, for our money, for the sake of this podcast, we've more than made up for that in this film. Jesus.
My God, yes.
And when I say from the opening credits, I mean that literally, because they are telling you what you're going to get in this film in song as the credits are rolling.
Yes.
Which,
no, the credits are sort of rolling, but they're mostly done because the bulk of the credits happen while they're in the hot air balloon.
In the hot air balloon, yeah.
And that to me is fantastic. I love that whole hot air balloon moment. I loved. And I didn't dislike when they land on the film set and start doing their song. The hot air balloon moment was wonderful because they're, it's Gonzo, Kermit, and Fozzie, and they're looking at the credits, they're talking about the credits, and they're bored because credits are boring.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of digs in the credits that I really enjoyed. Like,
this is the airplane vibe. This is the airplane vibe.
Yes, where they're like, who are all these people? I don't know. People, why do you read other names? Oh, well, they got family too.
They got family, yeah. What does BSC stand for? I don't know.
Yeah. Who does anyone actually read these? Yeah, sure. They got families. They all got families, and it's like, yeah, that's exactly it. But the one that was interesting to me is when they list the writers, because there's 4 writers on this film. There's Tom Patchett, Jay Tarses, Jerry Juhl, and Jack Rose. That is a lot of fucking writers.
It's a lot of writers.
And that is a red flag to me. Anytime I see a lot of writers, that is beep, beep, beep. Like, okay, problems. This isn't a singular vision. And when they get that part, one of the, whether it's a coincidence or what, but Kermit says, or one of them says, man, a lot of people should have worked on this film.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting because, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of writers.
It's seldom a good thing. It's seldom a good thing when there's more than 2 writers. Let's put it like that.
Yeah,
it's seldom a good thing. And one of the writers, Jack Rose, he used to write gags for Bob Hope.
Yeah,
and he wrote one of the Road films. He might have written more, but the one that sticks in my mind is Road. I think it's Road to Rio, and they are funny films, and Bob Hope's gags were funny, and I wonder if he was purely the gag writer or predominantly the gag writer.
I reckon so.
And the others were, because I think the others did work on the Muppet Show.
Some of them. Yes, yes,
so I think they're probably So I think they're probably they get Rose to give a list of a ream full of jokes, and then they say, well, which of these characters that we know so well is best to say these jokes? And they put the lines in the mouth accordingly. So how much, I suppose what I'm saying is how much involvement each of these 4 writers had, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you.
Oh, go on then. Go on then.
So, a little bit. I can tell you. I was very interested in how this script was written. I was like, did each person have their own crack at it? But it's 2 writing teams essentially. So the Muppet head writer is Jerry Juhl. So he's someone that worked on the Muppets, and ran it for a couple of seasons as well. So Jerry and Jack Rose together worked on this script. They completed the first draft in January of 1981, and then did a second draft that was done by March, and that was titled Muppets Hit the Road. And I'm highlighting this for a couple of reasons. One, we already know from that earlier quote that Henson didn't really know what kind of film he was wanting. He was, or if he did, he just was so bad at articulating it that his writers weren't getting it. And if you get to this title, Muppets Hit the Road, well, what does that have to do with the caper?
Well, exactly.
Is this meant to be a mystery, or is this not meant to be a mystery? What are you going for here? And as it happens, Henson was unhappy with their script. And April of that year, then Henson met with Tom Patchett and Jay Tarses, who worked on the Bob Newhart show in the 70s. And said, "Hey, I want you guys to do this." So they then rewrote the Juhl and Rose script and delivered a new one by June under a new title called The Good, the Bad, and the Muppets.
I love that title.
And it's a good title, but again, you're just sort of like, okay, where are we going with this?
Yeah, well, now we're in Western territory,
Yes,
aren't we?
is this a Western? But you have a movie set in London about a jewel thief with a lot of songs.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what is your focus here? And yeah, so then the final screenplay was completed in July. And essentially this film is a bricolage of all of these writers' material, and I think that shows.
I think it shows as well. It's not a unified film, is it? This let's be honest.
No,
this is a film that, you know, if you're a fan of the Muppet Show, it's good to see them on the big screen all together for longer than the half hour you might normally have had them for.
Yeah.
If you're not a fan of the Muppets, then it's sort of it's over 3 times the normal run time of a show that you can't abide. You know, so
yeah.
But it's just a series of like loosely connected scenes with jokes, and it's almost like sketches up until you get to that final quarter of an hour.
Yes.
When they assault the mansion.
Yep.
And really, that is the story, isn't it? I mean, the story is so basic, but it takes a long time to get there.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
and it's not even a proper caper. It's like it becomes like a spy movie. It becomes Mission Impossible in the end.
It becomes Mission Impossible.
It's espionage-ish, not.
Yeah, it's not because I was expecting. I thought they were going to, like, you know, be robbing banks or, you know, pulling stunts like that.
Yeah,
that's what caper means to me. But
yes,
you know, or like something like a Muppet version of The Sting with with Redford and Newman. But what you actually get on this is I suppose it's like a prison breakout film, like a prison break film, mixed with a sort of burglary.
Yes,
it's all very loose. It's all very.
It is,
you know, and a bit sort of wishy washy.
The studio were a little bit apprehensive to use the word caper in the title, and it's documented that they thought that was a mistake, but they thought that was a mistake, citing the sort of lack of success that caper movies were having around that time,
and the fad was fading.
Yeah,
you know, the fad was slowly disappearing, because there've been some caper films that have done quite well. I mean, Taking Pelham 123 is a caper film, you know.
Yeah,
but it was very much on the wane, certainly in Britain.
Yeah.
And I think it was bad timing, really. Well, and I think the studio, for once, might have had a point that the title is not helpful.
No, it's the title isn't helpful, and I guess we can discuss the noir elements to it, because they're really quite basic and simple and sparse, and which made it very frustrating for me, because I've seen, you know, this Christmas I watched a Muppet Christmas Carol for the first time. I loved it. It was great.
Which I believe is one of the best adaptations of Dickens' novella.
It's fantastic. It's beautifully done. It's moving. It's haunting. There's some really creepy looking stuff, and it's wonderful. And it's also an hour and 20 minutes.
This could have been an hour and 20 minutes.
This desperately need to be an hour and 20 minutes, not an hour and 40. It just didn't need this far, far, far too long of a movie.
It certainly is.
But you know, there are wonderful kind of noir ideas that they sort of played with. And, you know, you got your budding reporters, Kermit and Fozzie, and then you got Gonzo, who's sort of the photographer on the side, but they're new. They're like low on the totem pole, and they're getting their asses handed to them because they were too busy doing a song and dance to miss this big robbery that was happening right in front of them.
Right in front of them. Yeah.
It's funny. I can go with that. You know, I was on board for that. You know, I thought that was good. And then, you know, they're like, oh, well, you know, we want to go to London and go speak to Diana Rigg's character, Mrs. Holiday, Lady Holiday, and, you know, see if we can help. You know, they sort of inexplicably want to solve it, I guess. There's no sort of great rhyme or reason why they want to solve it, but they want to solve the mystery.
To stop
of
getting fired is what I, and to sort of make up for the mess they made when they were singing songs over,
Yeah. I can go with that. And so, the guy's like, oh, so can you, Kermit's like, or Fozzie like, oh, can you, pay for us to fly to London?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you find your own way to London. So you have that sort of down and out, low on the totem pole, non kind of policeman figure trying to solve a mystery. So, you have that
we're there
in and of itself.
We're there.
Yeah.
And of course, Kermit looks like a private eye.
Yeah, he's wearing the trench coat. He's wearing the
trench coat. He's got the fedora.
Yep.
He looks like, well, apart from the fact he's a frog, but he looks like the private eye.
Yes.
And Fozzie's his sort of sidekick. He's like the sort of Watson type character with a great running gag, and I love this gag that they're twins.
Oh, it's hilarious.
But people only know they're twins when they both got a hat on.
That just
brilliant.
I died with those jokes. That was really, really, really funny. I was like, the film needed a little bit more of that.
It needed more because it was gloriously stupid, and that's again the sort of airplane vibe for me.
Yes.
I can see that sort of gag coming out of an airplane film.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. But so even sort of like that newsroom scene is wonderful, but they then sort of keep playing with noir elements, and that's kind of down on their luck figures. And like their journey, the plane journey, they don't even get a seat on the plane. They have to go in the luggage. But they're not even like just in the luggage hold. They're in boxes.
They're in boxes, yeah.
Like as if they're animals being shipped, which is funny. Kermit says frog, one says bear, and then Gonzo says whatever.
Whatever.
Which I liked.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that the private eye, the disheveled, crumpled, poor, down at heel private eye, is treated with contempt by everyone that he comes into contact with, be it the police, the rich man the rich businessman in the palatial house on the facing out onto the ocean, or the crooks or the gangsters that are running the town. Whoever it is, they all treat him with disdain.
Yeah.
And here we have it, taken to a comic degree, I suppose.
Yeah. Like the plane doesn't even land. They get thrown out of the plane. And the gag continues. Like they get on a bus and they don't even get to stop. The bus doesn't stop. They get thrown out of the bus.
I didn't see it coming.
Thrown on their faces. It's
I didn't see it coming. When that air steward or pilot, whatever he is, comes into the luggage hold and says, right, this stop for London, and they say, oh God, we're there already. He goes, no, the plane landing already? And they say, no, the plane lands in Italy, but you're getting out at London.
Yes,
I didn't see it coming. I thought that was a laugh out loud.
Yes.
Really thought that was good.
But also like they arrive at the Happiness Hotel. And it's the exact opposite of anything happy. It's dirty. It's dingy. It's the kind of place you would expect a hard-boiled dick to end up.
With that, I don't know the name of the character, so forgive me, any Muppet fans out there. But whichever Muppet it is that's playing the desk clerk.
Oh, I think it's just a random Muppet. I don't know.
If it's just a random Muppet, that's fair enough. I don't feel so bad. But that's like the scene in Farewell, My Lovely, where Marlowe goes to Florian's, goes to the hotel opposite Florian's. It's like when Alan Ladd goes to that seedy hotel in the Blue Dahlia.
Yes, I was thinking the Blue Dahlia. Yeah.
It's there. He even looks like the actor that's, or certainly the costume that's in the Mitchum Farewell, My Lovely. He was playing that same seedy hotel clerk. They can't remember anything until Mitchum gives him $1 or whatever it is, $10, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that whole premise, that whole setup, is straight out of noir fiction.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly out of Raymond Chandler.
Oh God, yeah. Definitely. I was loving that stuff. But then it's sort of around this part where the film then just sort of stops being a caper and a noir. Almost sort of kind of. It carries on a little bit with the Lady Holiday office scene, which is another one that I did enjoy. Like I found her gag of, I'm calling Milan. Get United States on the phone. Well, Paris needs to be notified. It's all just so like vague and silly, as if these places are people. And I love
absolutely.
that. Mean Streets will return right after this. Who doesn't love a good boxing movie? Well, Steve Hunt presents the Boxing Movie Podcast. On each episode, Steve and his guests discuss a movie that has boxing as a theme. Do not be put off if you're not a fan of boxing, though. Of course, he covers the likes of Rocky and the sequels, but the depth of boxing-themed movies across cinema history is much greater than you might imagine. Boxing Movie Podcast has covered the early works of Hitchcock, explored the world of blaxploitation cinema and the golden age of film noir, with episodes covering The Setup, Champion, and Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss. You might not have previously considered yourself a boxing movie fan, but after listening to a few episodes of the Boxing Movie Podcast, you may have to reconsider that view. Find the Boxing Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to the show. And then
I love that.
Miss Piggy comes to Holiday to say, "Hey, I want to be a model," and she ends up as the receptionist. Like, how many Raymond Chandler plots start out with girl comes to California for chasing her dreams and ends up behind a desk somewhere?
Yeah, like exactly.
I was like, oh, this is cool. They're going with it a bit further. Fantastic. This is fun. And then it stops.
Yeah, there's all that the vibe of Merle in The High Window and Adrian Fromser in The Lady in the Lake. All those like you say, those girls who may have come to Hollywood to find fame and riches and have ended up as someone's dog's body.
Yes.
That's it. It's all there.
Yes.
It's all there. If you choose to look for it, it is all there.
It is. And then I guess it's frustrating because then stuff sort of starts getting in the way. So there's a wonderful moment where Kermit meets Piggy and she lies about who she is and says she lives at Highbrow Street, which is funny. That's a very funny gag. And she lies to Kermit and says, saying that she's she's Lady Holiday. And he's like, oh, well, let's go. Let's talk about the stolen gems. And she's like, okay, yeah, we'll go out to dinner. They'll go out to dinner tonight. And so they're still kind of keeping the noir element going, but it all kind of comes to a crashing halt after this scene, because there's this ridiculous moment in which Kermit and them go back to the hotel and they're singing a song about how he's got a date and how everyone wants to go, but he's like, no. And I'm just like, all right, like, okay.
Yeah, get a move
on. And then you have Miss Piggy who goes to the address, and I don't really know why she has to scale the building.
No, like King Kong.
It's funny, but I'm just like, but why?
Yeah, and well, I think just to give John Cleese and Joan Sanderson a cameo.
Yes, which is a very funny cameo.
It is funny, but it goes on a bit too long. That's the other thing.
It overstays. This is where things start overstaying their welcome.
They start overstaying the welcome. Yeah. I mean, presumably she thinks I won't be allowed in. They won't let me in, so I've got to climb up the side. But I lost it a bit at this. I started to think, why are we doing this?
Yes.
Why am I watching a puppet pig climb up a building?
Yes. I thought she was just going to wait outside for him to arrive and be like, oh, I was just outside waiting for you. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah. And I thought something was going to come out of it. I mean, not necessarily this, but she climbs in the wrong window.
Yeah.
And there's a little comic turn with John Cleese, but that just didn't come to anything other than John Cleese saying there's a pig climbing up the wall.
Yes. And then, then she goes and answers the door because Kermit's there. She sneaks in the house. She kind of avoids being seen, sort of.
Yeah.
And Kermit's like, oh, I've never been inside of a posh British house before. Can I come in? And so she's like, okay, fine. So then they go kind of walking around the house, and then like John Cleese, they see them.
And she has to call him Jeeves.
Jeeves, yeah. And then they sort of walk away, and then he's sort of following them, and there's this weird sort of like, oh, he's gonna get him, but I'm like, this is where it's like, this just feels like, as you said, this just feels like a sketch. Just feels like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Yeah.
That doesn't belong in this movie, because I don't know why this is happening or what this is adding to the plot or the caper or
anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
What's going on?
It is like a sketch, and it's just filler, and it's a film that doesn't need filling. It needs to get on with it,
Yes.
It needs to move on very, very quickly to really to the restaurant scene, because that's when the next
the club scene is great.
Plot development happens.
Well, it's not great. It's fun in places. It's fun in places.
It's fun in places, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's right to say that from this moment on, things do badly outstay their welcome.
Yes, I was going to say around this point is when we're getting a few too many Miss Piggy songs that just don't stop.
No.
And they get boring.
They do get boring.
Very boring.
They do get boring. And they become... Well, this is the problem I have with musicals. As soon as something looks as if it's about to happen, everything has to stop while we have a song.
Yes.
And songs are generally sort of 3.5 minutes, and I think you get through this quickly, please. Because 10 of these, and I've got that's half an hour of your film.
Yeah. I'm very picky with musicals. Some of them I like, some of them but I'm picky, very, very picky. I remember years ago, I hadn't been to a Disney film in a very long time, and Princess and the Frog was just coming out, and I was at university. And was it uni? Yeah, I think it was uni. And I went to go see it, and within 30 seconds of the film starting, it broke into song, and I just sunk in my chair.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I forgot Disney's are musicals. Shit.
Yeah.
And they have their place, and I enjoy them. But my sort of musical would be something like School of Rock. That's, to me, is fantastic because it's a great show. They integrate the rock songs and the studying of music and the band out dynamic. That's all kind of part of it, and it's not just full on stopping for song stuff. It's all sort of into it. Like when he's singing about math, that's just a great. I like musicals that do it more like that.
I can understand that. I'm still not
struggle
a great
with when they're a bit more like this or.
Well, my mum was The Sound of Music, and a live show of it came to Manchester years ago. And as a dutiful son, I said, well, if you want to go and see it, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
And there are days when I think I've only just walked out of it because it seems to go on forever and ever and ever. And when is this ending? And it was, and I felt a bit like that with this, because
I was getting bored.
Because the frustrating thing, I was frustrated by this film because, as we know from Roger Rabbit, it's not the fact that this is in inverted commas kids movie. It's not the fact that it's puppets instead of humans, because that's not a problem with Roger Rabbit, and it wouldn't be a problem with this. My problem with this film that I didn't have with Roger Rabbit is that it drags badly and it doesn't tell its story coherently enough to engage me. Whereas the Roger Rabbit story is a proper investigation. It's a proper detective story. When you strip everything else away from it, it's still a good detective story.
Yeah.
This is just bilge.
The mystery element of this just the deflated very, very quickly because one, back at the Diana Rigg scene where Miss Piggy she's talking to Miss Piggy, she has that moment that you said, oh, well, my brother I don't trust him. He's this, that, and the other. Oh, this is just exposition. We got to get out some way. And that is funny. That's cool.
That's funny. That.
But then she has three models who I think Kermit overhears or walks past, and then they talk about how they're going to steal something at the restaurant later on. And the thing is, once we meet Diana Rigg's brother, Nicky Holiday at this club, he's so obviously a bad guy. Yeah. And again, it's a kid's film. I get it, ish. But you've already set up these three models, and we know they're going to do something. So maybe make us think that he's not a bad guy. Maybe he's just inept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know,
well,
do
either
something
that
like that.
or and I did think they were going to do this for quite a long time. Make it at the end show that it's Diana Rigg who's the villain all along.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and he just acts suspiciously because he's a dork. You know,
Yeah.
and it's not suspicious. It's, as you say, it's just like thick-headedness.
Yeah, because I was like, he's funny. His performance is funny, and I enjoyed it. But I was like, oh, okay, so he's just in it with the models, and they're stealing the jewels, and okay, we now know this. We know the plot. Okay, oh wow, there's another hour and a half left.
So why am I? Yeah, so why am I? Why do you want me to invest in this?
Yes,
because I know everything now. You know,
yes,
and it's not as if kids, again, inverted commas, kids' entertainment isn't above doing things like that, because that's what Scooby-Doo is, a whodunit.
Yes, of course, the Great Mouse Detective.
Great Mouse Detective, absolutely. And in fact, the Great Mouse Detective came up when I searched for this on Prime. That came up before this.
Yeah,
and I
same.
thought, oh, wish I was watching that. Anyway, but yeah, so I don't think it sort of debars you from doing stuff like that, having the person you think is the villain turn out not to be, and for it to be someone else, just because you're doing a kids' film. I just
think this was just back to the lazy writing and
lazy writing,
not knowing what he wanted, and this being this collage of 4 different writers' story ideas being slapped together.
And if ever it is obvious, it's this.
Yeah, definitely. And because then at the club, like after there's a scene where stuff goes down and Diana Rigg has some gems stolen off of her, and Gonzo sort of suspects Mrs. Piggy, and that just felt a little contrived and forced. I was like, wait, what? Okay, sure, I guess, whatever.
Yeah, well, my thoughts were elsewhere actually at this point, because I was thinking of Gonzo, who is at this society restaurant thing with all the hoi polloi, taking photos. And I was thinking of Orrin Quest in in Chandler's Little Sister. You know, he's always he's taking photos of people, and he takes one of Steelgrave, whatever he's called. And I thought, now is this what's going to happen? Gonzo's going to take a photo of something he shouldn't take a photo of.
Yeah,
but no. Well, sort of.
He does actually, and I actually like that bit, because he does take the photo. They do the whole developing thing, and then it's like, oh my god, we've got them red-handed, and then the bathroom door opens where they're in what's become the developing room, and then the picture just melts away, and they've lost their evidence. And I thought, oh, that's a really cool noir beat. You've done something cool, but I've had to it's such a pain to have gotten to this next bit of noirness.
Well, like you say, we've had endless pig songs.
We've had several pig songs by now, several. And the other thing I got to say is this film bills itself as, oh, there's a romance between Miss Piggy and someone else. Well, I'm sorry, but Nikki Halliday and Miss Piggy do not have any sort of competing romance that Kermit is trying to win her over with.
No.
Like what?
Yeah, Kermit just sort of sees her with him and then says, oh, well.
He walks away. He's like, all right, see you later.
Yeah, until she gets locked up, and then he says, well, I better do something about this.
Yeah. I was like, what? Okay, so that's again, it's highlighting. It's like, this has not been developed well enough.
No.
You spent all your time on songs and I think gimmicks, because there are very impressive sets and there are very impressive choreographed musical numbers. The big musical number towards the end when Miss Piggy is doing her modeling and she's underwater, all that kind of stuff. That's really impressive stuff. I'm bored to death by it.
Absolutely.
It's very impressive.
Visually, it's impressive.
Scene, the bicycle scene is very, very impressive. But again, that goes on for like 5 minutes or so. And I'm like, this is cool, but like, stop. I don't need this. This has nothing to do with the caper.
Like you, I thought this is really well... Visually, this is stunning when that final dance number, and the bikes. It's very clever that they're getting these puppets to do it, you know. But I was sort of, looking at emails and Yeah. And looking at trivia about and trying to find reviews about this film, to see what others made of it. When really I should be watching it, and it really suffers from that. It's visually stunning, but I don't care.
Yes, because it's not in service of the story. It's just pulling you out of the story, and you're on pause. The story is on pause while they indulge in this, and I think that's the problem. It's all indulging,
self-indulgent. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Fucking frustrating. Because I mean, when the park scene, kind of before the cycling stuff goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on, there is a very my favorite cameo. Can you guess which one it is?
Peter Falk.
Yes, Columbo.
Yeah,
he comes up and he's dressed like Columbo. Kind of. He's smoking a cigar like Columbo. He's sitting there with Kermit, and he's like, "I'm going to tell you who I think you are. This is your prize." Yeah. And he does a whole sort of Columbo-esque deduction scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's the only one not credited.
Is he not? Well, he should. Well, he's great.
He should have been, but anyway,
he stole the cameos. He did even more than John Cleese.
Well, we'll talk about the cameos when a bit later on, because some of them are. The quality of, Peter Ustinov, for crying out loud.
Yes, but the Peter Falk one, I loved it because okay, cool, you've got a noir guy.
Yeah,
in your movie now.
In your movie,
so it's like the movie sort of remembers. Oh yeah, this is noirish caper. Sorry, excuse me. And so I enjoyed that, and then he turns out to be, I'm just selling some watches.
yeah, which is fine, but again, it's a sketch.
Yeah,
if he'd been dressed as Columbo, properly as Columbo, and he ended up making a mess of a deduction, and turned out, and then he sort of shrugged his shoulders and says, "Well, actually, all I do is sell watches." Yeah, that would have been a good Saturday Night Live. Like I won't say good, but you know what I mean. That would have been
sure.
The gist of a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Yeah,
taking the Mickey out of the Columbo character with a punchline. Whereas here it's a very enjoyable 5 minutes, and it made me smile all the way through. But it's 5 minutes the film can't afford to waste.
That is true. I can't disagree. Like if he was involved in.
If he came back
revealing a clue that Kermit didn't understand or something.
Yeah, or if it turned out he was like a master burglar that had fallen on hard times or something. And he helped with the heist.
Yeah.
Then something,
Yeah. Because then he goes away, and because Kermit sees Miss Piggy down by the water, and I was getting Faye Dunaway Chinatown vibes from the way Miss Piggy was dressed. And looking
in the blue with
in
the blue
that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that gag because she starts overacting and going crazy, and he's like,
one of my favorites.
But you're overacting. You need to dial it back. This is too much.
And she says, I am emoting 7 different emotions, and he says, well, you need to just concentrate on one of them. And then there was another really clever bit, I thought, where she gets really offended by it. And behind the scenes, they're obviously a couple. And he says, "Hey, Pig, I didn't mean it. Just for the sake of the movie."
Yeah, yes.
Really good. And he says, "We'll be okay once we've finished shooting this."
Yeah,
and I thought that was these are really good touches.
Yes.
Really good touches. They deserve to be in a better film.
They do. Frankly. That is exactly it. Because then the film just sort of like rushes to a showcase, a model showcase, and I'm like, for all the holidays, new swimmer fashion design stuff.
Again,
and I'm like, wait,
care.
No, but I'm like, wait, why are we? When did this become the climax of the movie? Why are we here? What is going on? Like, I was genuinely confused. And like, I'm sure other people are like, well, you should have been paying attention. Well, I was paying attention. I was still confused.
Yeah.
But it's in this moment that the 3 models and Nikki decide to then frame Miss Piggy. And I'm like, okay, well, Gonzo suspected her ages ago, so surely this frame up should have happened a long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah, a long time ago. This is almost as if they've sort of, seen some rushes, say, and they're saying, "Oh, this is great. And then they realize that, they kicked off a story somewhere like 100 years ago, and somebody said, perhaps we should really sort of try and tie that story up.
Yes.
But really, plot wise, either Gonzo is discovered as having overheard the plot, and he is the one that needs rescuing, or they frame Miss Piggy, as you say, much earlier on, because that was the plan.
Yeah.
So what have they been doing all this time? What have the villains been doing for this long?
Yeah. It's weird because
it's not as if Miss Piggy is sort of like keeping a low profile. They don't know where to find her.
Oh, exactly.
She's all over the place.
But also it's like, okay, well, you framed her for this necklace that was stolen at the club. You've not framed her for the jewels that were stolen in the US. And at the beginning of the movie, Diana Rigg's character, Holiday, makes a comment about having this diamond baseball, diamond, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, and you kind of don't know what is happening and what is the most important jewel. And it's like, oh, okay, this baseball diamond is the most important thing, and that's what they're going to steal next, and that's what they need to stop. And if they can stop that, Kermit and them can stop it, then they can prove that Miss Piggy didn't have anything to do with it. Okay, fine, but it's a heck of a leap to have gotten there. And I gotta add before I forget this. I mean, the thing is, the idea that this all comes down to them fighting for trying to find a diamond baseball. Like I actually really like that, because it's like it's what is the great American pastime? Baseball.
Yeah.
They are, and that is being stolen. The great American pastime is being stolen.
It's being stolen. And
they have to make sure it doesn't get stolen, because it costs a fortune, and it's so there was symbolically there was stuff that could have been also developed with that obviously I don't think they realized what they were doing or pointing towards. But yeah, then it stops. It utterly stops becoming a caper, and the hard-boiled elements are gone almost entirely by this point, and it becomes an espionage movie. It becomes Mission Impossible, getting the knock list.
It does.
It's like, okay,
and why? What's the point of framing Miss Piggy? Because
I don't know.
Because she's not going to be the one responsible for stealing the baseball diamond, is she? Because she's in prison.
Exactly.
So what does that serve? That's just to add some peril.
Yes.
That then turns out to not be a peril at all, because she manages to escape of her own accord.
Ridiculously does Diana Rigg's character, does she put the baseball in that museum before or after Miss Piggy was framed?
I don't know.
Because I'm like, basically what I'm trying to remember now is like, is it that she was framed and then put her most precious jewel in this museum for protection, and that was the brother's hope and plan? But again, it's very contrived. It's very contrived. It's got to be an easier way to steal a diamond than for her to put it into a museum that you then need to break into, Mission Impossible style. Quite literally Mission Impossible style. Which I guess this became before Mission Impossible, but still.
Well, nevertheless.
By about 15 years.
Yeah. I don't know I don't know that. But again, all this sort of... It would have been really sort of pleasing to me if Diana Rigg turned out to be the person responsible for the theft of her own jewels.
Yeah, and definitely.
She was setting up Nikki as a patsy. That would have been, and who in turn is setting up Miss Piggy as a patsy. I'd be quite happy with that sort of plot, but that's not what we get.
No.
I'll tell you what else we get: a long game. Well, what seemed to me a long game of Piggy in the middle with this diamond. Where you just think these, and as so often happens in films like this, the crooks turn out to be complete morons.
Yes.
So, there's no sort of payoff to them getting arrested, because an idiot could arrest them.
Yes.
And even in a film like this, and people might well say, well, you're taking this too seriously, but even in a film like this, you have to believe that the villains have got a chance, and that the villains
Yeah.
are up to par. I mean, you look at the Adam West TV series, the Batman TV series.
Yep.
For all its ridiculousness, the villains, at least some of the way, win.
Yeah.
They can outwit Batman. It's just that they don't do it in the end.
Yes.
So
yeah, definitely.
But these people are just morons, that deserve everything they get.
Yes.
Yeah,
they do, and it was a very disappointing finale. This whole sort of throwing the diamond back and forth. I just sort of, and I also sort of hated Mrs. Piggy's breaking, like prison break. I thought, why is this happening? Why are you breaking out of prison? Like, they're meant to be saving you, and now you're gonna go save them, but you're gonna go back to jail for breaking out of prison. Obviously, this whole thing is absurd, and like I get it, and I'm fine with accepting that you're not gonna go back to prison, but it just felt
it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
Well, I did enjoy the optical illusion of a full size Miss Piggy on that motorbike.
That was creepy. There was a couple of scenes where they have a person in a Miss Piggy costume.
Yeah.
There's one that's from looking down on the street when she's walking along the street sad and she turns her head a little bit. Fucking nightmare inducing shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
God.
Maybe that's why I liked it. Because I like creepy stuff, as you know. But
it's very horror.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I also found it creepy isn't the right word, but just sort of baffling. Charles Grodin as Nicky is looking down at this pig puppet saying, I really had feelings for you.
I know.
This is nuts. This is
I know.
Absolute crazy.
Again, I would have bought it if they at least made it part of the thing where, like, she comes to and Piggy comes to Diana Rigg wanting a job, and Diana Rigg is like, no, get out of here. But like, he gives her a job. You can be my secretary.
Or persuades Diana Rigg to do it.
Something. Yeah.
All that happens is he asks her out to dinner. She says no. And then he meets her again at the end.
That's it.
And she says something like, I realize that, you're bad and he is good, and turns to Kermit. You think, when did that happen? What? That's like, that's the sort of thing that you said.
So that's when it happened.
That's right. Yeah. That's the sort of thing you say at the end of a TV movie when you've gone through a bit of a crisis and you've fallen for the wrong man. And like a Bridget Jones film, But
yes,
this just comes out of the blue. It's one of those. It's the sort of thing that people say, and that people think they should say when there's been the vague suggestion that there's been a love triangle.
Yeah,
but it's not enough. It's not enough. It's like when you watch like the Justice League or things like that, where that the team has to split up.
Yeah.
And fall out. So they do, but they don't do it for any reasonable reason. Yeah. Necessary reason. Then that they all have to get back together. So they do. But there's no emotional depth behind it. There's no punch to it because it's just script by numbers.
Yes.
Well, it's the same with this. It's the same with this. And saying it's a kids' film is not an excuse because Roger Rabbit doesn't have it. Nope. Like I say, the Adam West Batman series does, and the film certainly doesn't have it. Because it's a kids' film, it shouldn't be taken any less seriously when you're creating it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Totally agree. But yeah, I've sort of touched on some of my likes and dislikes. I think my other favorite cameo, on the likes side here, is I did laugh when Oscar the Grouch turned up.
Yeah. I
was like, oh my god, it's Oscar the Grouch. I don't know why. I got a real kick out of that one.
Well, I got a kick out of it because he shares screen time with Peter Ustinov, who's one of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
And Ustinov, he says something like, this is just a low-paid cameo. And Ustinov looks at the camera and says, me too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'll be honest, there were a number of cameos that I'm like, this one went over my head because this is pop culture that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but at the time, Robert, Ustinov was and Diana Rigg were in a Poirot film at this time.
Yeah.
They were in Evil Under the Sun at this time. Falk will have been huge still. Jack Warden had just been with Ustinov in Death on the Nile. And Jack Warden was in. He's the editor of the paper.
Yes.
Right at the beginning, he's in like 12 Angry Men. And some real classic films.
Yeah.
And Crazy Like a Fox, the TV series.
Yeah.
And Robert Morley, who's the big, like, overweight British man, sat on the park bench when they land in the pond.
Yes.
Well, he was like a star, British screen star.
Oh, you're in Great Britain. Oh, we wanted to go to England.
Yeah, we'll never get to England now.
It is England. And that nice little village where there's like cricket over there. They're playing cricket, and then there's a horse-drawn carriage. Yeah. It's all like hilariously like
old-fashioned. Yeah. And I love the fact, and I mean, it's quite a nice little tour of London that they go on, but
oh yes, in the bus with the band playing,
and the joke about Kermit can't get a taxi because he's shouting taxi.
Yes,
the Brits don't do that.
Yes, yeah,
you politely hold out your hand.
Yeah, it was good. That stuff was fun. It went on a bit too long, but it was fun. What's your take on Diana Rigg as Lady Holiday? Because I'm torn on this one because I love Diana Rigg and I think she's wonderful generally, but I feel she was horribly misused, underused rather in this whole thing.
I think I'm a big Diana Rigg fan as well, in every way, and
she's the best Bond girl.
She's the best Bond girl. I've just mentioned Evil Under the Sun with Peter Ustinov, the Poirot film. She is fabulous in that. And when she's on screen in that with Maggie Smith, it's electric. But I think she knew exactly what this assignment was.
She did.
And I think she knew exactly what she had to do with it, and she does it.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, I would have preferred more of her and less of Miss Piggy.
Yes. It was frustrating. It's like, oh, they're going to help. The synopsis, they're going to help Lady Holiday and Miss Piggy. I'm like, they barely even talk to Lady Holiday.
Yeah.
They barely speak to her. I'm like,
she's wasted, really.
Yeah.
The scenes she's in are brilliant, and she does exactly what she needs to do. I mean, the scene you mentioned where Paris has got to know, Milan needs to be told and all this business.
Yeah.
And the bit about this is exposition day, we need to get it done quickly.
Yeah.
All that is very cleverly presented by her and delivered by her, and very like she's winking at you. She's winking at the camera without you actually seeing her wink at the camera, but you know she's doing it.
Yeah.
And she's great in it. She's perfect for the role as well. She, because she is that sort of, she's capable of playing that sort of upper class, posh aristocrat. And she does it very well.
Yeah.
Why she's got an American brother is anybody's guess. But
well, what is Gonzo? Whatever.
Whatever.
It's fine.
But it's to the film's detriment that they didn't use her more. And quite frankly, I wish I'd got more of Diana Rigg and less of John Cleese.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That John Cleese bit went on for it's a long time. It's 5 to 10 minutes. It feels like 10 minutes. It's probably less than that, but it's at least 5 to 8 minutes.
And it's the same joke, and it isn't really a funny joke.
Yeah, no, just goes and goes. But not even just the joke, but like everything, the whole scene in that house, which is probably about a 5 to 10 minute scene. You don't need it.
You don't need it. And this is one of the things that occurred to me.
Bicycles, so much could have been cut. Ugh.
If you cut down the John Cleese scene, if you cut down the bicycles in the park, if you cut down the Busby Berkeley numbers, like you're easily eating into that hour and 40-minute runtime. And I think what you've got here is an episode of the Muppets.
Yeah.
Where they have to break Piggy out of prison and break into a house to save her name or whatever. That could be told in 30 minutes. The rest of it is just window dressing.
Yeah.
That doesn't really do anything or serve any purpose. And maybe at a push you've got an hour special. But you haven't got pushing a 2-hour film. No way. No way.
No. It's interesting. Yeah, I was baffled. And I was like, when I put it on, it's an hour and 40-some minutes. I was like, oh god.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I mean, the saving grace is that if they made it now, it'd be 2 hours 40 minutes.
No. If they made it now, it would be shorter. I'm almost positive the new Muppet movies are shorter.
Oh really? Oh well.
Yeah, they've got to be. Yeah, I don't remember what the last Muppet movie was, but yeah.
One thing I do like, and we don't often talk about the posters, but I do like this poster.
Yes.
The way it's set up like a newspaper, they're bursting out of a newspaper, and it's the great Drew Struzan, who, he's sadly missed in the cinema poster world now. But this does what I think Marvel Studios posters want to do. It's got everyone in it, but it's also good to look at, whereas the Marvel posters are just horrendous to look at.
Yeah, I mean, in general, a lot of film posters over the last kind of 10 to 12 years have been uninspired.
Yeah,
uninspired.
But I like the front page because they are on a job for a paper. Yes. Everything about the poster is relevant. It's not just a gimmick that it's a newspaper cover, and it's got Grodin and Rigg as supporting cast at the top.
Yeah.
But the Muppets are the stars, and it just does everything it needs to do. It does what the credits do when it tells you what you're about to expect, and the end credits tell you what you've just had.
Yeah.
And I did like I liked the end credits. No irony intended. It wasn't just because they were rolling and the film was over. I thought, and I especially like Gonzo taking the audience's photo and saying, "I'll send it on to you."
Yeah.
That was a nice,
cute.
sweet little ending. Cutesy little ending.
But
it didn't make up for most of what had gone before.
No. I mean, like you said earlier, the film wasn't well received by critics. Roger Ebert, the Chicago Sunday Times, gave the film 2 stars out of 4. He says Henson and his associates haven't developed a screenplay that pays attention to the Muppet personalities. Instead, they ship them to England and dump them into a basic caper plot, treating them every bit as much like a formula as James Bond.
I have a bit of sympathy with that, I have to say.
Yeah, I think he's spot on. I think he's spot on with that. Interestingly, I was going to say another one from the Los Angeles Times at around this time says that the Muppets, the Sheila Benson wrote, the Muppets don't belong in a caper movie. Now that I disagree with. I disagree. I think they could have made this work, but they got in their own way by Henson being too ambiguous about what he wants this film to be.
Absolutely.
I think he should have just made an homage to musicals because that's really what he wanted.
Yeah.
It didn't need the caper.
Absolutely. But I disagree with that last review as well. Because I agree that he should have done 2 films. He should have done a musical and a noir. That's what he should have done.
Yeah.
But you can't blend the 2 entirely satisfactorily, and he certainly doesn't.
Well, you can maybe blend noir with musical, but you can't blend an homage to musicals with noir very well. That takes a certain amount of talent that was beyond what they put into this.
Yeah, I agree. I think he should have just had the guts to say, I want to make a Muppets, an homage to those old 1930s, 40s musicals, the Fred Astaire films, and Singing in the Rain, all those, with Muppets. And he should have just done that. And then he should have said, quite like the idea of doing a mystery homage as well.
Yeah.
Again with the Muppets, and he should have done that.
I agree.
Blending the 2 is bordering on disaster, really.
This. I mean, on that, I think we should probably rate it.
5. I give it 5 falcons.
5 falcons. So as our regular listeners know, we rate all of our films out of 5 falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Start with you, Matt. What would you give The Great Muppet Caper?
Well, this is more difficult than I thought it was going to be, actually, because I didn't like you said at the outset, I think there's a fairly decent noir comedy fighting to get out of this mess. Yeah. And for that, I have to give it credit, because you can see it's there. And I loved all the cameos, but it's a mess, and I hated the songs. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm gonna go with 2.5. I think for this.
Okay, there you go. Fair enough. I didn't hate all the songs. I hated mostly Miss Piggy's songs, and then I felt some of the others should have been cut down or cut out entirely. Some of the songs I do quite enjoy. The song "The First Time It Happens" while they're dancing in the club. That's actually pretty deep. Wait, is that the club scene or is that one on the bicycle scene? I don't remember now.
Is it not when he's getting ready for the date?
Yeah, maybe. But the song "First Time It Happens," I remember liking that song, but I remember being bored to death with the Miss Piggy's musical number at the end, and I remember being bored with her when she's in another parts of the film. But yeah. Yeah, no. The First Time It Happens is in the club. It's in the club, but it overstays its welcome. It goes too long, but there's sweet songs in it. But yeah, anyway, like I said, there is a bit of a noir thing coming out, struggling to get bubble to the surface. Doesn't really achieve that. The ending kind of fails to satisfy those tropes of the genre that I was sort of expecting, and it's not like it subverts my expectations. It just doesn't know what it's doing. So I think, in all fairness, while there's a handful of very, very, very good jokes, a number of fun and surprising cameos, some good music, some good amazing puppeteering, I think I'm gonna have to. I'll be generous and I'll give it 3 stars, three falcons. I don't want to go too much below that, because I don't know if I feel like I'm being a bit mean, because there is still, even though it's bloated and a bit messy, there is an incredible amount of artistry happening on screen that we also I don't feel I see as much today, because there's everything about this film is practical, which is also very, very impressive. So I feel on those levels, the songs are well constructed. The puppeteering is incredible. The sets are amazing. The hijinks, the absurdity, all of that stuff is well handled. It's just that it doesn't mesh that noir with the musical homage as well, and that's where it sort of falls apart, and certain scenes overstay that. So I'm going to be generous and give it a 3 falcons.
That's fair enough. It part of the what you say about practical effects. That's one of the reasons why I liked the creepy life-size Miss Piggy.
Yeah, it's creepy, but it's cool.
That's a combination of puppetry, live act, stunt woman, and all the rest of it that does actually blend quite well. So, but there you go. We differ only in my dislike of musical songs.
Like, all songs are bad.
Yeah, all musical numbers are horrendous.
But well, I don't know. I think we've thoroughly investigated the Great Muppet Caper.
I think we have, and it was a caper in its own right.
It sure was. Well, I guess that wraps up our investigation. Tune in next week for another episode. In the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe, and take care walking down those mean streets.